The Mini Match Pod. Hello guys, and welcome to the third mini match pod of the season, and it's all going swimmingly. Really enjoying doing this series, and I hope you are too. And yeah, seemingly it's going as well as Ipswich's season at the minute, but same can't really be said for this Saturday's opponents, which is MK Dons. So we're going to break them down in a little bit more detail as we always do on the mini match pod, but we've got some special contributors today. We've got the MK Way blog. I've had a good conversation with him via the wonderful world of social media. He's going to fill in a few gaps in my knowledge about MK Dons and how they've been getting on this season, as well as ITFC Analytics. He's making his debut. Didn't quite come together last week because I had to get the podcast done ahead of time, but he's going to be contributing more and more as the weeks go by, breaking down our opponents, how we can best exploit their weaknesses, and hopefully have a good afternoon. And if you're listening, Paul, that's Mr. Lambert, that is. If you are listening, maybe get in touch with our friend ITFC Analytics, because he may be helping you to a League One title this season. So let's have a look at this Saturday's opponents, Milton Keynes Dons. So Town travelled to Stadium MK for the second away trip of the season to face a side managed by not only a former Norwich City captain, but a player who was signed by our very own manager at this level, and that's Russell Martin. So the former Norwich City captain took over midway through last season, taking over from the very experienced Paul Tisdale, who had previously led MK Dons to promotion in his first season, having been at Exeter for seemingly an eternity. He's there for 12 years and had a brief season in League One with the Grecians in 2011-12, but most of the time they were always on the periphery of the playoffs and promotion, sometimes getting into the playoffs, and they've got a terrible record in the playoffs, which continued this year as well. So maybe it's not Mr. Tisdale that was the issue there at Exeter, but unfortunately Mr. Tisdale would only last until early November after taking 1 point from 9 games after a pretty good start. But yeah, the next 9 games really a difficult spell for them, and that led to Russell Martin retiring as a player just one day after being confirmed as the MK Dons boss. And he had a tough start initially, his first managerial job in charge of MK Dons, but really found some form after Christmas, and that included respective 4 and 5 match unbeaten runs, which saw the Dons declared safe in 19th position via points per game. And little did they know, with all that was going on with COVID and whether the season was going to resume, that late resurgence under Russell Martin was ultimately what saved them. They had a poor opening to the season, which saw them in the relegation zone for most of it, but the form of some players that, unfortunately, as we're going to go on to talk about, aren't with them anymore, kept them up. And yeah, a good first, half of the season for Russell Martin. So, like we said with Rochdale last week, I think the effects of COVID have really took their toll on Milton Keynes Dons. They seemingly have had to let a lot of key players go for financial reasons, and they've chosen to take up contracts not only in elsewhere across Europe, but they found themselves in clubs in the division. And I think the impact of having games behind closed doors with such a small fan base that MK Dons have, they're a Phoenix club rising from the ashes of the former Wimbledon side of the crazy gang of the 80s and 90s, and trying to build this club, which they've got a fantastic stadium. If you have been to Stadium MK, it's far and away the best stadium for facilities in the division. You'd argue probably up there with the Stadium of Light, and certainly ready for Premier League football, but they just don't have the fan base. And I think what they're trying to do as well, Peter Winkleman's obviously had a lot of experience in the music industry. They're trying to use the capacity they've got there for music and entertainment reasons. And obviously, as we know, I'm sure many of you have had concerts and festivals cancelled over the summer. That's taken their toll on MK's ability to generate some revenue. But we'll go on to matters on the pitch, which is really where they've been affected. And the most notable departures, as we mentioned, would be Alex Gilby and Conor McGrandles in midfield, as well as Reece Healey up front. So Gilby and McGrandles have up sticks for League One rivals. So Gilby has moved to Charlton, and Conor McGrandles has moved to Lincoln as well. And as we mentioned, Reece Healey, his 11 goals were what really kept MK up last year. He swapped Milton Keynes for Mil Foy. Yeah, I've been watching me Bake Off. So he's moved to the continent with Toulouse. They're in the French second division, quite an established French first division club for a number of years before that, but not having the best of years last year. And obviously their season was curtailed, like many seasons across the globe, by the COVID-19 pandemic. And yeah, they found themselves in the French second division. But as for the players that are going to be in League One this year, and we're going to come up against them, just not for Milton Keynes, McGrandles has been described by the MK Citizen, funny name for a newspaper that, but that's what they've gone with, as a workhorse with a flash of flair and an underrated presence. And I think for him to link up with Michael Appleton at Lincoln says everything you need to know about the player. Appleton always looks for technically sound players that are comfortable on the ball and can contribute heavily, both keeping possession of the football and generally being a calming influence in the squad when they're on the ball. So you can tell the sort of player that they've lost there in Conor McGrandles. And as for Alex Gilby, formerly of Colchester, some of you who go down to see Col U may know him from his time there. He was Player of the Year last year. Played a big part, as well as Healey in midfield, in the Don survival, and his goals and his overall energetic presence in the midfield is going to be missed. And they've also lost the likes of Ryan Harley, Ben Reeves and Jordan Moore-Taylor, who struggled last year at League One level, but were all capable at League Two level and a big part of MK's time in League Two. But yeah, as we've said, the financial impact of COVID, coupled with all these departures, has seen MK have to dip into not only the free agent market but the loan market to replenish the squad, and where their deficiencies are now with these players leaving. So Russell Martin's pulled a few favours with his former employers up the road from us. He brought in Norwich City loanees striker Colton Morris, who's been on loan countless times, and we'll go on to talk about him a little bit later. And midfielder Louis Thompson, who's again been on loan numerous times from Carrow Road. So he's linked up with former Norwich City captain. They're going to hope to fill the voids left by Healey and McGrandles, I'd say. And then they've also brought in the likes of Warren O'Hora and midfielder Lasse Sorensen, who've joined from Brighton and Stoke City respectively. They've also joined on loan. Highly rated left back Daniel Harvey joins from Ayr United from the Scottish. I think they're in the Championship, aren't they? He was obviously playing with Aaron Drynan last year when he was on loan. He's helped to come in, refresh the position at left back, which was seemingly reserved for Dean Lewinton, who's been there for, Christ, I think it's 16 years I've looked into. So yeah, it looks like they're trying to find that next left back who can fill the void. You know, he'll go down as an MK legend, Dean Lewinton, and yeah, unfortunately his time seemingly has come to an end as a left back as he's got older. But yeah, Harvey comes in to try and refresh that position. But they've had some really big arrivals, I'd say, and for a club of MK's size and stature at this moment in time, again in the face of adversity with the COVID-19 pandemic's financial impact on football, they've been able to bring in some really impressive signings on a permanent basis, and that would be Burton's Scott Fraser on a free agent, as well as former Derby County skipper and a player we believe will were supposed to be interested in, which was Richard Keow. So Fraser looked destined for a championship move, and he's come out recently to say that's what he had his eyes set on. But I think, as we saw, as I mentioned on Sunday's episode of the ITFC Unrestricted pod, that the COVID has took a real impact, and especially it's a difficult time for free agents with the salary cap in place as well for them. If the championship moves don't always materialise, they do find it difficult to get a move to a club that realistically expect to be challenging for promotion this season. So he's unfortunately had to find a move where a club has got a little bit more space on their salary cap, in their on their wage budget. And but he had a great year with Burton last year, scoring 5 and assisting 11 as they finished mid-table. But you'd say he was the star performer for him last year. And as for Richard Keow, joins after his sacking from Derby. We all know what went on there. That drink driving incident with our former loanee Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett, but had some horrific injuries in that. But we'll have to see what players left in Richard Keow, but very much a high risk but a really potentially high reward signing for MK Dons there. But once again, we're facing an opposition who are going through a period of change, both on the pitch in terms of their squad, with a raft of arrivals and departures, key players from last season. But I'd say they've brought in some good players to replace them if they can gel and fit into what Russell Martin is hoping to do here at MK Dons. But Russell Martin himself is a new manager. It's now his first full season. He's had this summer to shape his squad. Obviously a little bit difficult with the financial restrictions that COVID has brought on a lot of clubs, but his first season to shape his squad and develop his style of play. But last season they seemed to use a 4-4-2 diamond for the majority of Russell Martin's time there. But this season and their recruitment has sort of seen a shift in formation and style of play, and Russell Martin and his head coach Luke Williams, who's seemingly quite a coach who's held in high regards in the Football League, they seem intent on replicating the high-energy 3-5-2 system utilised by Chris Wilder. I think everyone's like to have a go at it. We obviously had a little bit of a go at it last season as well. So even complete with the marauding centre-halves, they look to be implementing that. And as I said, the quality that's left the squad has been balanced with some solid additions, and potentially more to come as we edge close to the transfer deadline in a couple of weeks now. If MK can recapture some of their late form from last season, they could surprise a few sides. And if this new formation does work, they could be really dangerous and not a side to be underestimated. But obviously football's not won on paper, and we'll see how they've got on in their previous 3 results. So we'll jump into that now. So MK Dons started the season with a 1-1 draw away at Doncaster Rovers. An impressive start, really. Doncaster are a very good side at this level, not to be underestimated. And I think, by all accounts, they had a good game and arguably were a better side for most of the game, dominating possession over 60%, and that'll be a running theme throughout their opening games. But they went behind, but Bailey Cargill, their defender, equalised to deny Rovers an open day victory. But a really good start, and I think they had the majority of the chances, but unfortunately unable to secure the victory there. Coming to their next game, which was their first home game, and it was a 2-1 defeat to Lincoln City. So Conor McGrandle's new side, as we mentioned, under Michael Apperton. A game that was overshadowed by some questionable refereeing decisions from Huxtable. I don't think he's the most popular ref around, is he, in this division? But controversy surrounding the opening goals for both sides. But the Dons once again with the lion's share of possession, but slightly blunt in front of goal and unable to get that second goal, and defensive mistakes ultimately costing them at the end. And then we come to last Saturday, which is their most disappointing result of the season so far, which was a 2-0 defeat away at Crewe Alexandra. And the tale is probably there. It's going to reveal why MK Dons had such a torrid afternoon. They haven't won an away game in over a year. I think the last time they won was away at Blackpool, and I think Russell Martin may have even scored in that game. So that goes to show how long it's been since they've won an away game, but a comfortable victory for newly promoted Crewe Alexandra. And I think Dons had an abysmal time in the first half. This new system was evidently not working. A slight recovery in the second half, but didn't look threatening at all. And I think Crewe sat in once they had their comfortable lead, and going on previous experience from previous games for Milton Keynes, didn't look like they were going to score. And yeah, Russell Martin came out after this game and described the first half as the worst in his time as MK manager. So yeah, not a great performance for them to come into this weekend on. And if you look through those three games, the tale of them games is lots of possession but no cutting edge. I think the amount of overhaul in the squad, coupled with this change of system, seems to have left Milton Keynes stuttering at the start of this season, leaving them where they arguably were at the start of last season, in the relegation zone. So it's seemingly stick or twist for Russell Martin and MK Dons now. Do they carry on with this 3-5-2 system, which seemingly the recruitment they've brought in would suggest is what they've been aiming for, or do they revert back to the 4-4-2 diamond system that they used successfully last season? But yeah, the return of Richard Keow, he came back in the game against Crewe as a late substitute, couldn't really make up for any of the mistakes that happened previously and put MK in the position that they were behind to Crewe, but he could offer some defensive stability and much needed leadership in that back line. They've got quite a young back line that we've seen in their opening three games, who we'll go on to talk about and how they've lined up in the last game against Crewe. But his return, if he's anything close to the player he was at Derby, he could be a real signing for them. And who knows, maybe we missed a trick there. You never know. But as I've said, they may have lost quite a lot of quality, but there's plenty of talent within this MK Dons squad. But it's about pulling it together into a cohesive and effective lineup for them, and that seems to be the issue right now. And the biggest talking point, and what'll always win football games, is if you're not going to score enough goals, MK Dons, aren't going to win games. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going to be the sharpest in the attacking third. And they may have had all the ball, but clearly aren't using it as well. So before we go into some tactical analysis with our friend ITFC Analytics, we'll see how they lined up in their last game against Crewe Alexandra, and we'll talk about a few players that were on the periphery of that squad and have featured for them this season as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It's not a squad to be underestimated, but yeah, let's see how they're going to line up. So as we've mentioned, MK Dons lining up with this 3-5-2 Chris Wilder inspired formation. So we'll start with the goalkeeper, which is Lee Nichols, 27-year-old, fairly experienced keeper now, over 120 appearances with Milton Keynes Dons in both League One and League Two, and he's been an ever-presence really since replacing David Martin, who you may know for his time at Millwall and most recently at West Ham. But yeah, really good year for Nichols last year, made 123 saves last season, which was the most in League One. So definitely had a busy time of it, but had a tough start to this season, and I think a few out-of-character moments in the defeat to Lincoln shouldn't overshadow the quality that he does have as a goalkeeper. And I think when he's in good form, like we've seen when we've had the likes of Bielakowski, if you've got a goalkeeper that can keep the score down and keep you in games, then if you can nick a goal up the other end, especially at this level, that's always a good string to have in your bow and in your arsenal. Then we'll move to the back three. So not the most experienced back three at this moment in time, and made up of two young players and a very experienced player. So we'll start on the right side, where they've got Warren O'Hora. He's a 21-year-old who we said is on loan from Brighton. This is his first loan move in senior men's football, having never featured for Brighton since his move from Bohemians in Ireland. Described as a rough diamond by Russell Martin, but seemingly having all the intangibles of a modern-day centre-half. Athletic, comfortable on the ball, but a little bit inconsistent so far. But I think the MK Dons fans have seen flashes of potential but really struggled against Crewe. And I think this is going to be like we saw last week with Gavin Banzunu, the goalkeeper for Rochdale. It's a learning experience for him coming down to this level, playing against some wily pros, and seeing if he can hone his craft. And Brighton have got quite a production line of centre halves at the minute, and maybe Warren O'Hora is going to be the next one. But he's going to have a tough time and probably quite a busy time playing for Milton Keynes Dons, particularly if they're going to continue with this 3-5-2 system. In the middle, for the meantime, they've got Mr. MK himself, Dean Lewinton, so 36 years old now, a youth player when MK were previously Wimbledon, but he's stuck with them since they relocated, and he's made over 750 appearances in a 16-year career. But you'd say he's in the twilight of his career now, but he did still feature 33 times last season. I think he has signed a new deal, so there may be life in the old dog yet. But famously a left back for the majority of his career, but he's now been put into a centre back role with this 3-5-2 system. Maybe he hasn't quite got the athleticism to get up and down that left flank, and with the recruitment of Harvey and another player we're going to go to talk about in a minute, maybe they're just going to use what he can offer in terms of being a leader in what is a very inexperienced squad, you'd say, and his ability on the ball. Then he's going to be more useful as a centre half for them this season. But I don't think he's had the best start, like the majority of the defence, really. So it does remain to be seen how long he does have left as a consistent performer for him, and whether he does continue as a centre half, or if and when they decide to change their system up, does he revert back to his tried and trusted left back position. So on the left side of the defence, in this three-man defence, they've got Bailey Cargill, so a 25-year-old who joined MK following his release from Bournemouth in 2018. Really struggled for form and his fitness last year, but seemingly refocused this year, brought back into the fold. And as a modern centre-half, these marauding attacking centre-halves, he is perfect for that. But the problem is, when it comes to being an out-and-out defender, when you need to be, when their backs are up against the wall, his defensive output does struggle, and he has certainly struggled in both games against Lincoln and Crewe, despite his equaliser on the opening day. But I think he gave away the controversial penalty to Lincoln, and obviously an afternoon to forget for everyone associated with Milton Keynes Dons last time out. But we'll move on to the fullbacks now. So on the right, on Saturday, they had Callum Britton. So he's a 22-year-old academy graduate who was initially released in the summer due to the financial impact of COVID-19 before re-signing on a 2-year deal, I believe it was. He's an attacking fullback who has filled in the middle of the park as well when they've had a few injuries, and a few of the new lads trying to get their form going and fitness, match sharpness, all those lovely football terms. But he's again another one who's got question marks around his defensive contribution. But on his day, he's an athletic modern fullback, and he can take set pieces. So we'll be looking out for his deliveries from that right-hand side should he play there on Saturday. He could be a dangerous asset for him. And then on the other side, so we mentioned Daniel Harvey, but he lost his place in the side to Matthew Sarinola, who's a 19-year-old who came through Fulham's academy, and he's had an impressive time at MK Dons to start his short time there, including some man-of-the-match performances in the EFL Trophy games, which led to him getting his first start against Crewe. Seemingly very highly rated, and he's impressed the MK Dons fans as well as Russell Martin in his short time with MK Dons. But again, very young and still developing his game, and who knows, maybe it's going to be a straight-up fight between him and Harvey, who's going to be Dean Lewington's successor, seemingly. So we'll move on to the midfield three. You've got a range of talents and players who can come into here, but the three that started against Crewe was Jordan Houghton, so 24-year-old who's graduated from Chelsea's academy, joined the Dons in 2018, and he's that disciplined cultured metronome that you've got in the middle of the park, and he drops in and supports Dean Lewinton or whoever stays back when the other centre-halves have been bombing on in this 3-5-2. But yeah, seemingly key for progressing the ball, really comfortable, good passer, but certainly more a defensive option in comparison to some of the other players that they've got in this system. And maybe when they played the 4-4-2 diamond, maybe they dropped him into the middle of a back three to allow both the fullbacks to go forward. So we may see that. But yeah, certainly more defensive option, but very comfortable on the ball, very cultured player, and he is key for them retaining possession of the ball and progressing the ball up the pitch. So playing slightly further forward, you'd say, is Ben Gladwin. So he's a 28-year-old who got his big break. He had a really good year with Swindon in 14-15 when they were in League One, and that got him a big move to QPR, but he could never really break into the first team picture there. And then that followed an injury-ravaged spell with Blackburn when they were in League One, and I think he was still there when they were promoted to the Championship. But once again, like his time at QPR, couldn't really affect things and get his place in the first team. But he signed with the Dons in January, and he, again, another one who was initially released to reduce the burden on the wage bill when games are being played behind closed doors and football isn't in operation. But yeah, he's only now starting to regain this match sharpness. But on his day, a talented box-to-box midfielder who certainly has the ability to contribute heavily for MK Dons, and they'll be pinning their hopes on him to perhaps fill the void where Alex Gilby's gone. It's all about maintaining that fitness, which unfortunately for Gladwin he hasn't had in the majority of his career in the last few years. So the other centre mid that they have is Lasse Sorensen. So he's a 20-year-old Danish creative midfielder who they've signed on loan from Stoke City. And after Project Restart, I think he really impressed Michael O'Neill at Stoke City, who took over there midway through last season. And he was on the fringes of the first team, and he did get some appearances, but they've decided to loan him out. And I think he's probably been the one so far that the MK Dons fans have been really impressed by, and he's one that they pin a lot of hopes on for a squad, that is lacking creativity and goals. Maybe he's going to be the one who can pull the strings in that midfield. But yeah, again, he's going to be another one who's not had a lot of game time in his career, and perhaps this loan spell is a chance for him to show what he can do against, like we said, with a lot of these players that come out on loan to League One. You're playing regular football, which is the main thing, but you're playing against some really wily professionals. You look at some of the players that even you've got Stephen Ward, who's played in the Premier League, and looking throughout the division, you've got the likes of Paul McShane, who we faced last week, Glenn Whelan's at Fleetwood. There's some really solid and very, you'd say crafty, but very clever professionals in this division who, these young lads really need to know how to best in order for them to maximise their potential and really push on in their careers. We'll go on to the two strikers. So where they've been struggling, and the MK Way blog has said that their strikers really don't look like scoring, unfortunately, and that's perhaps where the departure of Reece Healy is really costing them, and perhaps they're going to look to bring in another striker to help reduce the burden on these two. But we'll look at the two that started against Crewe. So Colton Morris, 24-year-old Norwich Academy graduate, had various loan spells, and most notably something that should draw our attention to him was his time under Paul Hurst at Shrewsbury, where unfortunately suffered an ACL injury in the playoff final, which stopped them gaining promotion. But yeah, he struggled to recapture some of the signs of potential he had there. I think he scored 6 goals in that loan spell, which isn't obviously prolific, but a decent return on, I think that was his first loan spell in English football. I think he had some time in Scotland prior to that. But he joined MK Dons on loan in January after starting off the season on loan in the same division with Rotherham, and he's rejoined them again to link up with the former Norwich City skipper who's at the helm at MK Dons, but yet to score this season. And he's seemingly more of a hold-up support striker, someone that they can get the ball up to and maybe bring others into the game, the likes of Sorensen, Gladwin and his strike partner, whoever that may be. But I think he really needs to form a partnership with this next player, which is Joe Mason. So some of you may know Joe Mason's from his time with the likes of Wolves and Cardiff in the Championship. He's a 29-year-old, fairly, I'd say, experienced kind of second striker, kind of in that mould of a Freddie Sears or a Danny Ward, who we've seen at the likes of Cardiff and Huddersfield. He went to the MLS after his time in England, and he's returned to MK Dons. And out of the striking options that MK Dons have, you'd probably say he's the most likely to replicate the form of Reece Healey, who's since departed. But injuries have really stunted any progress he can make, and unfortunately I don't think he can really be relied upon as that regular goal scorer that MK Dons really need. So we'll talk about the two men who we bigged up as the big signings for MK Dons, and that's Richard Keow. So 34 years old now, ex-Republic of Ireland international. But yeah, he seemingly, whether we offered him a deal, I'm not sure, but he took a move closer to home with MK Dons, probably a shorter journey from where he was living previously when he was at Derby. But yeah, came on as a second half substitute, as we've said, despite initially being ruled out for 15 months. So he's made a swift recovery, just under a year, I think it is. So, and I think it would be unfair for us to say that on his day he is a terrific defender, and he probably is if he can recapture his form that he had at Derby, he would be the best centre-half in the division. There's no question about that. But again, those injuries, it does leave the question how much is left, and only time will tell to see if Town missed an opportunity. Obviously, we've got a centre-half in now in Mark McGuinness, but Richard Keogh's experience could have been invaluable. But we'll have to wait and see, and MK Dons could reap the rewards and finally find that leader that they kind of need at the back. And the other player that we bigged up was Scott Fraser, 25-year-old Scottish midfielder, and as we said, he's seemingly destined to play in the Championship, but that move never came for him. But he's had to settle with MK Dons, and he'll have to go again and maybe get that move in a year's time. But a really technically sound player, and on his day, a high-calibre attacking midfielder. His goals and chance-creating abilities could actually be the difference for the likes of Morris and Mason if they are going to contribute a little bit more. But as we saw with Rochdale last week, Don's strength seemingly is in the middle of the park. Some quality additions in addition to what they already had, and if they can get their better midfielders fit and firing, then ball retention possession isn't going to be an issue for them. It's just going to be if these better players, the likes of Fraser and Sorensen and Gladwin, can stay fit and contribute more, then that may ease the woes that they've had with the likes of Gilby and Healey leaving them. But they've also got the likes of Louis Thompson, who's on loan from Norwich, and he's had various loan spells in this division, and he is a player that you could argue perhaps should be playing Championship football, maybe not with his parent club Norwich, but he could easily fill in for one of the promoted sides. And they've also got academy graduate Kasumu, who's gaining more experience as a player, and he's more of that box-to-box player, similar to Gladwin. But obviously Gladwin, if he can stay fit, is a higher calibre player than him. But yeah, I think, and as I said, MK Way blog suggested, they are missing goals, and it's a real worry for them. They've got Sam Nombi, who's another support striker, you'd say, someone that's going to run the channels, but it doesn't look like he's going to pull up any trees. And they've got Kieran Agard, who seemingly blows hot and cold, and has done for a number of years, really. But yeah, a tough time for MK at the minute. They're, like I said, they're really trying to find their way, and this new vision of the 3-5-2 that they've got in place seemingly isn't working at the minute. And they may be having all of the ball, but unfortunately they aren't finding the back of the net, and that may come to benefit us. But we'll see what ITFC Analytics makes of it, and maybe he'll reveal a few key scenarios which could ultimately be the difference between an Ipswich win and an Ipswich defeat. So let's see what he's got. I said I'd promised him his own theme music, and yeah, there you go. You're going to hear more of that as the weeks go by. Hopefully hear more and more from ITFC Analytics, but make sure you hit him up on Twitter, give him a follow and chat with him. He's a very knowledgeable guy, very busy, but he's going to always try and get a preview out and a review of every game, which is really good to see, something we haven't really had in the ITFC community. But yeah, looking at the notes that he's given me, hopefully he'll be able to feature on the podcast in person at some point. But like I said, he's a very busy lad, and I've sort of had to press him to get these notes to me ahead of the podcast. But yeah, thinking along the same wavelengths really. This 3-5-2, 5-3-2 formation is exactly what we expect. And yeah, as I've said in the course of this preview, that really MK have had a lot of the ball and they're not doing a lot with it, and they're in a way overcommitting, trying to force chances which unfortunately they haven't been able to create, and that's left them susceptible to the counter-attack. And I think Crewe exploited this perfectly, where they got their 2 goals very quickly in that first half last Saturday, and then were able to sit back and make it really difficult for MK to break down. And ITFC Analytics has picked out that when they attack, particularly down their left-hand side, that can leave them very much exposed on the right, because Lewinton and whoever the other centre-back, when they've been playing through at the back, shift across to provide cover, and if the ball is countered quickly down the right-hand side, that can leave a little bit of an imbalance in the team. But yeah, they've also struggled against big strikers, I've been told. So obviously Crewe have got Mikel Mandron, who used to be at Colchester, another ex-Colchester boy we're talking about in this video. Lincoln have got Tom Hopper, who was at Southend, and they've both had joyful afternoons, I think, against perhaps a back three which not only isn't as experienced as MK would like, but features Dean Lewinton, who's spent the majority of his career as a left back and maybe hasn't had to deal with the hustle and bustle of a big striker. So hopefully the League One Olivier Giroud, I've heard that name being bounded about by a few other accounts. I don't think it's quite reached the Ipswich Town community yet, but another good performance from Ollie Hawkins could, have a good afternoon. And again, going back to speaking to the MK Way blog, he's really not very optimistic about this game. I think he's worried that they're in for a hiding, and especially with our early form, he's got them down for a 4-0 loss. But I'm not going to do any score predictions here today, because that's only going to tempt fate. But yeah, I think the key thing that me and ITFC Analytics have agreed on is getting in behind them. And again, like we faced when we faced Bristol Rovers, it's another side. If you can pin back those wing backs who are going to have to do a lot of the work carrying the ball forward as well as providing the width, if you can pin them back by using your fullbacks, then we should be in for a solid afternoon. And if they're struggling against big strikers, we saw Ollie Hawkins on Saturday nearly scoring with his head and also being very dangerous in the box with his hold-up play. If we can see that again, then we could be in for a good afternoon. But yeah, as I said, always we'll have a little bit from ITFC Analytics, but make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. He'll have all the graphics to accompany his threads before a game. And yeah, it's a really detailed preview, far more detailed than I can be, and a lot more knowledgeable probably than me as well. But that'll probably do us for this week then, guys. And yeah, another good episode. Really enjoying these previews, as I've said. And yeah, make sure you get in contact with me if you agree, disagree, and if there's any MK fans listening to this as well, let me know what you think about the game, both beforehand and afterwards. That's what this is all about. I love talking about football. I could talk football for hours and hours on end, probably far too long. And yeah, the missus don't always approve about talking about football for so long. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your week, guys. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back again next Thursday with another video, and hopefully we'll still be sitting pretty at the top of the league. But yeah, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Join me on Thursdays at 7 p.m. for the mini match pod as we look back at Town's performance in midweek action before giving you a comprehensive look at this weekend's opponent. giving you all the knowledge and stats you need ahead of the game. We've got you covered. Thank you for watching or listening to this week's ITFC Unrestricted podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer and TuneIn. If you haven't already, make sure you follow, download or subscribe so you never miss an episode wherever you are listening. A new episode will be live on all platforms at 6 p.m. every Sunday. For more immediate reaction to all the latest town news, give me a follow on Twitter at rskid26. Go on, you know you want to. Until next week, I've been your host Mark Beck, so take what you need, be on your way and keep on following town.